Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder and this is BRN Weekly for Saturday, November 21st, 2020. And our top story today, fewer Americans are traveling for Thanksgiving, but if you are, here's what you need to know. Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Jeanette McGee of AAA. Jeanette, great to see you. Thanks for coming to the show this morning.
Good, I'm doing well. Thanks for having us back. Always love chatting with you.
Yeah, it's this, and look, we're going into the holiday season. A lot of people thinking about traveling, and there's so many different sets of rules now in different parts of the country. So you were the person I thought about, honestly, to kind of break this down for us. So what can you and AAA tell us?
Yeah, well, right now a lot of people want to travel for the Thanksgiving holiday. There just may not be the need to travel. With pandemic cases increasing and more states putting in restrictions or guidelines in terms of coming in and out of states, a lot of people are rethinking it. So while we do have our Thanksgiving forecast that estimates, potentially up to 50 million Americans have plans to travel, we know not all of those are going to travel. We expect at a minimum a 10% decline in travelers for the holiday compared to last year. And again, that just goes back to people not being comfortable spending time with family and friends in different parts of the country.
Well, I think you're right. And look, if you have to travel, maybe you're in a higher risk area of the country, or you're going to a higher risk area of the country. Also, things to consider, I would think, Jeanette, would be, if you're staying in a hotel versus whether you're staying at someone's home. How do you sanitize? How do you take care of yourself? There's a lot of different moving parts here that I think people need to balance.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of moving parts. And, if you are traveling, you've got to do your research, know the risks, visit CDC's website to understand their guidance and how to, if you do choose to travel, their recommendations. AAA always recommends, of course, consulting CDC website, but understanding what the restrictions are where you're traveling to. If you do decide to travel, make sure that you're packing your mask, your thermometer, your hand sanitizer, your cleaning supplies. Those are extremely important, and plan how you're getting there. We know that the vast majority of those that do make the personal decision to travel for Thanksgiving are going to go by car. So it's not just getting in the car and taking a road trip. It's getting in the car and knowing where and when you're stopping along the route. Minimize the number of stops where you can so that you're reducing exposure.
And, Jeanette, I guess kind of running parallel to this and less important, obviously, than health, you look at gas prices. Gas prices have been historically low and have, I guess, started to creep up a little bit. What's your sense for gas prices during the holiday season?
Gas prices are cheap, period. That's the trend we've seen since early March, and it's the trend we're going to see well into 2021. Gas prices right now on the national average is about 50 cents cheaper than it was a year ago. To that point, when we look at holiday travel, there are typically three things people really look at. What are gas prices? How much traffic am I going to hit? And, do I have the discretionary income to take this trip? And those are three things that are just out the door this Thanksgiving. They're not important to people. Prices are cheap. We just talked about that. Holiday traffic just isn't going to be there. And for those that are employed, they do have a discretionary funds. The factors people are looking at to determine if they're going to make that trip is the COVID cases and how they feel personally, and if they feel comfortable being around other people, not just, versus staying at home.
To your point, I do think people are going to rethink this. I'm from Baltimore, and I know the Baltimore Ravens, just an example of what's happening. There's an influx of cases in Maryland. The Baltimore Ravens, a football team, have pulled back on attendance, so there'll be no attendance at this Sunday's games. And I think that is just out of respect and protection of not only the players and the staff, but also clearly citizens. And I think people are really going to take great pause this time of year and say, look, how do we just get through this? We know that there's a vaccine, so there is a light at the end of the tunnel. When that tunnel ends, Jeanette, we don't know. But I do agree with you. I think people are going to sit back and say, let's just have a FaceTime or a Skype Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we definitely agree with that. And for those that do travel, we're understanding that they're taking precautions, so quarantining before they travel, that when they go, they're going to go, to their destination, they're going to stay there and come straight back home. So typically with, Thanksgiving, you see people gone, 5, 6 days out of the week, maybe the full week. They're not doing that. They're traveling shorter distances, and they're staying for shorter amount of times if they do decide to travel. But again, we know a lot of people, while they have plans, they're not following through with those plans.
A question kind of directed to travel by car. I think, Jeanette, last year during the winter months, we talked about winterizing your car, the importance of that. And again, if you're going to be traveling on the road, you may not have thought about it. I'm looking out the window here in Charlotte. Well, not really literally out the window, but I have looked out the window this morning, and it's like 35, 40 degrees. That's really cold, very cold when you don't have hair, by the way. People need to think about prepping their cars during this winter season as well.
Yeah, definitely. Winterizing your car is important. Or if your car has been sitting idle, you're not driving it nearly as much, and you're about to take it on a road trip, it's definitely important to get it checked out. You don't want to be a stranded motorist. Now, if you are, AAA will, of course, be there at the roadside to help you out. But definitely important to take a look at your car and make sure it's in tip-top shape for any trip or for the winter. You can always do that by going to a AAA auto-approved repair center, and they can help you out. But, check that battery, check your tires, make sure your fluid levels are topped off, so you can go that extra mile if you do decide to travel, or whether you're just traveling, in your own city.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, plan, more plan. Jeanette, always a pleasure chatting with you, getting the latest on holiday travel and a lot more. Have a great rest of the weekend and have a great Thanksgiving. We'll talk to you again very soon.
Sounds good. You have a happy holiday too.
Thanks, Jeanette. Great to see you. Thanks for sharing your perspective and have a great holiday. And when we come back, we'll discuss the best segments of the week. So stay tuned right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate copays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. Look, with the uncertainty of the virus and vaccines, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Here's the bottom line. Call to get significant benefits at no additional cost and see if your zip code has coverage with the Give Back benefit. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-924-3920. That's 1-800-924-3920.
Welcome back. On Wednesday, I sat down with Saul Levinson Brothers' Eliza Feller to discuss some advanced funeral planning tips. Let's take a look.
The interesting thing about this pandemic is there are a lot of people who've reached out to us saying they've been meaning to talk to us. They've been meaning to get information about funerals and just have things set out ahead of time. And this has really brought the importance of that to the forefront and made them realize that this is the time to make these plans. And the reason for that is just, we've talked about it before, that if these plans are in place, even if they're not set in stone, at least it's a framework for your family so they don't have to go through all these decisions at the time. They don't have to try to scramble to find someone's social security number. They don't have to look at caskets and decide what casket to put their loved one in. So, just important at any time, but right now it's really on people's minds. It's one of those things that people shouldn't have to scramble to find at the time. If someone passes away and you're trying to work out travel plans and all sorts of details, and having to go search for someone's mother's maiden name or their social security number is something that a funeral home can have on file, or something that they can have on file at home. We've spoken before about wills, and people say, well, I'm going to put my intentions in my will. It's important for people to remember a will is not going to be read most likely until after the funeral. So making sure those funeral plans are available ahead of time. But also that other documentation you spoke about, we have a resource for families to gather all sorts of information about where their various bank accounts are, what property they own, credit cards, stocks, things like that, that your family won't have to then go searching through your entire house, because, they usually have to close out empty out a house or a condo or even a nursing home room, quickly. And they don't want to have to go through also all the paperwork just to figure out where, all that financial property may be. It's a challenging conversation at any age, but really as soon as possible. Marriage, that's an important time to figure out, to have that conversation about what your intentions are after you pass. If you're choosing cemetery plots, where do you want those to be? It's that's a tough age to make that decision. We're also mobile these days. But certainly you don't want a spouse to be in the position, God forbid something happens at a young age, to have to make all those decisions kind of on the fly. And sometimes people make decisions that afterward they say, you know what, if I had had time to think about it, that's not what I would have done. So, I'm not that old, I like to say, but I have my plans in place. And, my husband and I, it took us several conversations about cemetery plots and our intentions, but we had to, I knew more than a lot of other people in this world, unfortunately, that I've seen those situations occur, and someone, either something just very sudden and tragic happens, or someone gets ill at a younger age. And I see a spouse have to decide where they want to pick cemetery plots, and they have to go out to the cemetery and look at the ground and say, I want my partner to be buried by that tree. And it's kind of heartbreaking to watch, for all the obvious reasons. The industry as a whole wasn't sure what was going to happen with the pandemic, and certainly finances are difficult for a lot of people right now, but we're actually finding more people who want to at least begin to pay, even a small portion, to start to set aside funds so that their family will owe less at the time. But a lot more people are calling us to make arrangements, and of those people who reach out to us, more than usual are starting to prepay.
And on Thursday, I sit down with FINRA's Jerry Walsh to discuss the predictive power of financial literacy. Let's take a look.
FINRA is the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, and we're a not-for-profit, non-governmental regulator of an important slice of the securities industry. We oversee the brokers and the brokerage firms who sell stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and other investments to investors here in the United States. And we are not part of the federal government, but we are overseen by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So we're empowered by Congress to do the work that we do, but no tax dollars support our mission. We license the professionals, and we also we register the firms themselves. And there's a great deal that goes into that, as you alluded to, because to be a member firm of FINRA means that you have been subjected to capital requirements, to supervisory requirements, a raft of regulation, to make sure that we're able, as a regulator, to carry out our mission of investor protection and market integrity. That's the whole goal of this self-regulatory model. The foundation's whole goal is to help empower people with the tools and resources that they need for financial success throughout their lifespan. And we do that through both educational outreach and initiatives and research. And research underpins virtually everything that we do. And so for many years, we've been working on a project called the National Financial Capability Study. We started the first wave in 2009, and we've done it every 3 years since. So 2009, 12, 15, 18, and we'll be going into the field in 2021. But in addition to doing this survey where we had this massive sample of 25 to 27,000 people with each wave, but we also wanted to do some longitudinal research. So we worked back in 2012 with RAND, and we used a sample that they have called the American Life Panel. And we ran all of the questions on the National Financial Capability Study in that survey, or in that sample. And then we did it again 6 years later. So instead of just doing a massive survey, which gives you a lot of great data, we're actually going back and asking the same people 6 years later answers to the questions. And so that enabled us for the first time to be able to get a longitudinal check on how people's attitudes and behaviors and their knowledge related to money had changed, whether they had changed, and if so, how they had changed. And the cool thing about this study is that we were able to get a baseline measure of financial literacy, financial knowledge, using 5 of the questions of the 100 questions that we asked people. And we saw that knowledge was pretty stable over 6 years. It didn't change a whole lot. And to the extent that it changed, it was among younger people becoming more financially literate, and some older people, older the age of 65, lessening their financial knowledge. So we saw that it was actually pretty stable. But the cool thing was that it also helped us predict financial outcomes. Where your financial literacy level was in 2012 could be a marker for financial outcomes 6 years later. Because the more research that we do, and I have to give credit to our collaborators, we worked with the Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center at George Washington University, and also the University of Southern California's Dornsife Caesar Center, which is the Center for Economic and Social Research. Those researchers have really been trying to crack the nut of, and many other researchers have been trying to crack the nut of kind of what works with financial education and what benefit does financial education provide. Because there are some naysayers out there who point to disclosures and say that, education doesn't work. If education comes in the form of disclosure, you're asking people to read these complicated disclosures and they don't seem to be acting on them or changing their behavior because of them, then it doesn't work. And what we're trying to tease out is, how does it work? Does it work? And if so, how can it be made better? And, so other research that we've done that's not the subject of this particular report showed that the rigor of the mandate for financial education in high schools actually impacts future behavior of people who are exposed. So the more rigorous the mandate, if you have to take a financial education class in order to graduate high school, you're more likely to have positive credit card behaviors and less likely to be incurring debt. So yes, this absolutely impacts what we teach, how we teach it. But I think fundamentally what it really underscores is that financial knowledge matters. Because what this study shows is that the higher level of financial knowledge you have, the more likely you are to have these positive financial outcomes in the future. The more likely you are to weather a financial shock, the more likely you are to be planning for retirement. And those are important behaviors that we want to encourage.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Don't forget, we're back again tomorrow for BRN Sunday. I'll be joined by members of the media, academia, and financial services as we analyze all the news this week in retirement, markets, technology, so much more. So join us then. Until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.